everyone, this is Easy Peasy here with episode 4 of my Beginning Bible Study series. We're moving from the Old Testament into the New Testament today. The New Testament is what tells us about the ministry of Jesus when he was on earth. And today we're starting in chapter 15 of Luke chapter 15. In this chapter there are 3 stories called parables that all talk about something that has been lost. And the 3 parables are the parable of the lost sheep, of the lost coin, and of the lost son, which is also known as the prodigal son. Now, because of time constraints, this can't go over 10 minutes, we're just going to focus on the parable of the prodigal son, or the lost son today. But I encourage you to read the other 2 parables on your own, because it's all 3 are woven together with the same theme. Okay, I'm going to read the parable to you and then we'll talk about it. This parable happens in a series of scenes, or acts, like a play. And so I'm going to read through it and then we'll go back and talk about each section. Okay, it starts in chapter 15 of Luke and it starts in verse 11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again, for he was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" So many of you may be familiar with this parable of the prodigal son. I think it's such an important parable because it shows the perspective of the father, who in this parable we can think of as God. Let's break this up into different scenes or different acts. In the first part of the play, we see a father and 2 sons, and the younger son is wild and he wants his inheritance right away. So the father is generous and gives it to him, but instead of using it wisely, he goes off and lives a wild life and just wastes his money. But he winds up destitute and poor, no place to live. And remember, these are Jews. And he gets a job feeding the pigs, which would have been like the lowest of the lows. And he was so hungry that he felt like he would eat the pigs' food if anybody would give him some. That's how low he sank, because pigs are unclean in the Jewish faith. And so he had sunk so low to feeding the pigs. He was like lower than the pigs. So he begins to think about his father, and everybody that works for his father, all the hired men, have food to spare, and here he is starving. So he rehearses his speech, and he says, I'll go to my father and I'll say that I've sinned against him and against heaven, and that I'm not worthy to be his son, and just to make me a hired man, like a worker on the farm. So he decides to do that, and he gets up and goes. And then it kind of shifts into the second scene. So the lost son is a long way away, but the father sees him, he sees him and recognizes him from a long way away because he's his child. And instead of being angry, the father is compassionate and forgiving toward the son who has finally come home. As it says, he was lost and is found. He was dead, but now he's alive again. And the father is overjoyed and wants to celebrate, so he brings all the best things and puts them on his long-lost son. And they kill the fatted calf for him, which would have been like the most expensive, succulent piece of meat that they could have had at that time. Well, now we shift into the third scene. The older son, who never did anything wrong, who never disobeyed his father, who was wise in his choices and who has worked hard this whole time, comes and hears the music, and he asks, hey, what's going on? So one of the servants tells him, well, your brother is home, and so your father is celebrating. And the older son is angry because his father never did this for him. His father never killed the fatted calf for him, so he's very resentful and jealous. And then we shift to the fourth scene. The older son refuses to go in and celebrate his brother's return. And the father goes out and asks him, please come in. And the older brother says, you've killed the fatted calf for this son of yours who was irresponsible and slept with prostitutes and squandered his living. And then the father says, you are always with me and everything I have is yours. So the reason why the celebration is going on is because the father has regained his lost son, but the older son is just jealous and can't understand what's the big deal. Why does he get all these special things? But the older son doesn't realize is that he has always had the love and generosity of his father all of this time, and that he has no need to be resentful because everything the father has will be his one day, whereas this lost son has lost everything and didn't even have enough food to eat. So a lot of times people read this and they identify with the prodigal son, the one who's lost in the beginning of the story. But personally, I have always identified more with the older son because I never was wild and I never disobeyed my parents and I wasn't crazy and I've been responsible. So when I was younger, I would kind of identify with him and think, yeah, I don't understand either. But as I become more knowledgeable about the character of God, I can see that both sons are lost. The first son is lost because he has run away from the love of his father. And the second son is lost because he was with his father all the time and had that love, but resented it. He resented the grace that his father bestowed on him. So I just have a few questions to kind of sum up. Okay. Which brother do you identify with the most? The lost one at the beginning or the lost one at the end? What can we learn from the response of the father toward each son? What about the older son? Does he need his father's love just as much as the younger one? And why does God continue to offer his grace and mercy to humanity while we continue to reject it and resent it? Those are just some questions to think about. Thank you for watching. Bye.